The billionaire's fiancé accused the maid of theft at the gala. Then everyone saw the scar and went silent. Nia Bishop had worked as household staff for the Ashford family for just under a year, long enough to know the unspoken rules of a house like theirs. Move quietly, don't make eye contact with guests unless spoken to first, and never, under any circumstances, let anyone remember your name unless something has gone wrong. She'd taken the job after leaving a career she didn't talk about, 6 years as an Army combat medic, 2 deployments, an honorable discharge that came with more scars than medals and considerably fewer job prospects than she'd expected walking back into civilian life. Household staffing paid steadily and asked no questions about gaps in a resume, and steady was what Nia needed most in the year after coming home. The night of the Ashford Foundation's annual charity gala, Nia was working the main ballroom floor, refilling drinks, clearing plates, staying invisible among 200 guests in a room dripping with chandeliers and old money. She was good at her job. She was careful, competent, and had never once in 11 months been the subject of a single complaint. That changed at 9:40 p.m. When Vanessa Cole, fiancée to Ashford Group heir Julian Ashford, discovered her diamond bracelet missing from where she'd left it on a side table near the dessert display. The accusation Vanessa didn't ask quietly. She didn't pull Julian aside or find the house manager or handle the situation with anything resembling discretion. She marched directly into the center of the ballroom, voice rising loud enough to cut clean through the string quartet, and pointed straight at Nia, who was 20 feet away clearing a tray of champagne glasses. "That one," Vanessa said, loud enough for the nearest 50 guests to turn and stare. "I saw her near my bracelet. It's gone. Search her, now." The room went quiet in the particular way rooms go quiet when 200 wealthy people sense a scene about to unfold and can't decide whether to look away or lean in. Julian, 20 feet off, froze mid-conversation, visibly uncertain whether to intervene or let his fiancée handle whatever this was. Nia set the tray down carefully, her hands steady out of long habit, and turned to face Vanessa directly. "Ma'am, I haven't been near the dessert table in the last 20 minutes. I've been working the far side of the room." "I don't care where you claim you've been," Vanessa snapped, closing the distance between them fast, anger and humiliation clearly tangled together in her voice. The specific fury of someone more embarrassed at having lost an expensive bracelet in front of 200 guests than actually convinced of who'd taken it. "You people always have an excuse ready. I want this handled right now, in front of everyone, so nobody thinks I'm the type to let staff walk all over me." Before Nia could respond, Vanessa reached out and grabbed the shoulder of her uniform, yanking hard enough that the fabric tore at the seam along Nia's upper back, exposing a portion of skin along her shoulder blade before Nia stepped back sharply, pulling the torn fabric closed with one hand, her jaw tight. Her composure, the same composure that had carried her through 2 deployments. The only thing standing between this moment and something far worse. What the room saw, the tear had exposed something Vanessa clearly hadn't expected, and the reaction in the surrounding crowd shifted almost instantly from morbid curiosity to something closer to shock. A long, pale scar running diagonally across Nia's shoulder blade, old and clearly surgical in nature. The kind of scar that doesn't come from an ordinary accident. An older man near the edge of the crowd, a retired brigadier general named Harold Whitfield, a longtime friend of the Ashford family and, as it happened, someone who had spent 30 years around exactly this kind of scar, stepped forward before anyone else could speak. "That's a combat medic's scar," he said, his voice carrying clearly through the silent ballroom. "Shrapnel wound, field treated, judging by the pattern. I've seen dozens exactly like it." He looked directly at Nia. "Where'd you serve, soldier?" Nia, still holding her torn uniform closed with one hand, straightened her posture out of 11 years of instinct. 3rd Battalion Combat Medic. 2 tours, discharged 3 years ago. The general turned to the room at large, and then more pointedly to Vanessa. "This young woman has almost certainly saved more lives than every person in this ballroom combined, myself included. And you just tore her uniform in front of 200 people over a bracelet you haven't even confirmed is actually missing." The truth about the bracelet, it was Julian finally moving through the crowd toward his fiancée, who delivered the detail that ended the scene entirely. He held up Vanessa's diamond bracelet. "Retrieved," he explained, "from exactly where she'd left it, on the edge of the dessert table, half hidden beneath a linen napkin that had shifted during service. It was never missing, Julian said quietly, the words landing hard in the silent room. It slid under a napkin. I found it 2 minutes ago before you'd even finished making this accusation. He looked at Vanessa with an expression that mixed embarrassment, disappointment, and something more permanent settling into place behind his eyes. You didn't check. You didn't ask calmly. You grabbed a stranger in front of the entire gala and tore her clothing because you assumed, immediately, that the person most likely to have taken something was the woman serving drinks. Vanessa, for the first time all evening, had nothing to say. Nia, given the opening, didn't raise her voice, didn't demand an apology, didn't make a scene of her own. She simply said evenly, "I'd like to go change out of this uniform if that's all right," and walked off the ballroom floor with the same steady composure she'd carried the entire encounter, leaving 200 guests and a visibly shaken Vanessa Cole standing in a silence that lasted a long, uncomfortable moment before the string quartet, uncertain what else to do, resumed playing. What happened after Julian found Nia in the staff hallway 10 minutes later, still visibly rattled but composed, holding a spare uniform jacket she'd borrowed from a co-worker. He apologized, genuinely, at length, in a way that made clear the apology was as much about his own silence during the incident as it was about Vanessa's actions. "I should have stepped in the second she grabbed you," he said. "I hesitated, and that's on me. I'm sorry." "You're not the one who tore my uniform," Nia said. "You don't owe me the apology she does." "She'll apologize," Julian said. "Whether she wants to or not," he paused. "I also want to say what General Whitfield said about your service. Is there anything the foundation can do? We fund veteran support programs. I had no idea someone with your background was working in my own house, and that's uncomfortable to sit with, honestly. It means I never once thought to ask." Nia considered this carefully before answering. "There's a veteran employment initiative I've been trying to get funded for 2 years. Small nonprofit, helps former combat medics transition into civilian medical and emergency response roles. Nobody with real money has taken it seriously yet. Feel free to enter your text here and select it for free," Julian said. "I mean that." 6 months later, the engagement between Julian Ashford and Vanessa Cole quietly ended within a month of the gala, not solely because of that one incident, Julian later admitted to friends, but because it had forced into focus a pattern of behavior he'd spent too long making excuses for. Vanessa, for her part, never publicly acknowledged the incident beyond a brief, stiff apology issued privately to Nia the following week, an apology Nia accepted graciously and then, just as deliberately, moved on from entirely. The Veteran Employment Initiative Nia had been quietly trying to get funded for 2 years launched fully within 6 months, backed by an initial grant from the Ashford Foundation substantial enough to place its first cohort of 30 former combat medics into civilian emergency response training programs across 3 states. Nia left her position on household staff to run the program full-time, a job that finally used the 11 years of training and experience she'd spent a year folding napkins to make ends meet instead of using. She still keeps the torn uniform, mended now, folded in a drawer at home, not out of resentment, she says, but as a reminder that the worst moments sometimes turn out to be the exact hinge point a much better chapter swings open on, if you're steady enough to hold your ground until the truth catches up. If this story moved you, you're not alone. Sometimes the people we're quickest to dismiss are carrying histories far larger than the small role we've assigned them, and sometimes the truth has a way of surfacing exactly when it's needed most. Like, subscribe, and tell me in the comments, have you ever misjudged someone based on the first impression alone?